The child of a wealthy magnate was in critical condition, suffering from a relentless, insidious ailment that was slowly consuming him from within. A singular blood type was the only hope for his survival. A B negative, a rare designation held by fewer than 1% of the global population. For 2 years, a period of 24 consecutive months, a dedicated woman presented herself each month, rolled up her sleeve, donated her blood, and then returned to her duties, mopping floors within the very same hospital, 3 levels beneath the child whose life she was sustaining. She remained entirely unaware of whose circulatory system her life-sustaining fluid was entering. Likewise, the father, a man whose net worth was estimated at $4.2 billion, a titan who had built his fortune on leveraging technology to aid ailing children, was oblivious to the fact that the sole factor preserving his son's breath was a woman he encountered daily, yet never truly saw. Then, one evening, the truth was revealed. All of it came to light, and the woman who had been safeguarding his child for 2 years was found on her knees, diligently scrubbing another's bloodstain from the hospital floor. The action he took next held the potential to irrevocably alter her existence or confirm the cynical adage that generosity from the influential invariably comes with a hidden cost. 2 years prior, Amara had just concluded a grueling 12-hour overnight shift. Her feet throbbed within footwear that had long surpassed its serviceable lifespan, showing signs of wear and tear for the preceding 6 months. Her hands were chapped and cracked from constant exposure to hospital-grade disinfectants, the kind potent enough to eradicate all forms of life on the skin, including the skin itself. Her uniform had faded from a deep navy to a duller, grayer hue. The pervasive scent of bleach, floor polish, and the residual essence of others' suffering clung to her. It was 7:15 in the morning. She should have headed home, collapsed into her bed in her modest apartment, and slept until her next duty commenced. Instead, Amara veered left in the main hall, bypassing the cafeteria and the gift shop, proceeding down a corridor that remained largely unknown to most personnel within the establishment. She entered the blood donation center. The attendant at the counter looked up and offered a welcoming smile. She had come to recognize Amara by this point. Another monthly visit, right on schedule. Amara settled into the donation chair with the casual ease of someone taking a seat at a neighborhood coffee shop. It was a practiced ritual, as if parting with a piece of oneself was merely another ordinary Tuesday. The nurse secured the tourniquet around Amara's arm and gently palpated for a vein. "You know," the nurse remarked as she prepared the needle, "your blood type is quite remarkable. A B negative. Fewer than 1% of individuals possess it. We are perpetually in short supply. Always. There are perhaps only a handful of regular donors in the entire city with your particular type, and the majority of them don't present themselves as consistently as you do." Amara observed the needle slide in, her dark, warm blood commencing its flow into the collection bag. She remained unfazed. She never flinched. "Do you ever ponder who receives it?" the nurse inquired. "Your blood, I mean. We are unable to disclose that information, of course. Donor anonymity is paramount. Once it departs this facility, it undergoes processing, typing, cross-matching, and distribution to where it is deemed necessary. You will never know which patient ultimately receives it, and they will never know it originated from you." Amara responded with a slight shake of her head. "I have no need to know. My mother used to impart a saying from our homeland. She would say that blood is the one thing that the affluent and the less fortunate share equally. When you donate it, you are bestowing life itself." She would utter this phrase with the same quiet conviction some people employ when reciting prayers, not with grandiosity, nor attempting to sound profound, but simply stating a deeply held belief. The nurse concluded the blood draw, meticulously labeled the bag, and placed it in the refrigerated unit alongside others. Amara's blood would undergo examination, processing, and delivery to a recipient within 48 hours. Such was the established protocol, anonymous, efficient, and discreet. One individual gives, another receives, with neither party ever aware of the other's existence. Amara pressed the cotton ball firmly against the crook of her elbow, maintaining the pressure. This was her 7th donation. 7 months of silent altruism. Her motivation was not for accolades or financial remuneration. There was no payment involved. Blood donation is a voluntary act. You offer it, they accept it, and the sole compensation is a cookie and a small cup of orange juice. A modest offering that Amara invariably accepted, having learned long ago that refusing complimentary sustenance was imprudent. She occupied the recovery chair for the requisite 15 minutes, consumed her juice, savored her cookie, and then rose, donned her warm jacket, and departed the donation center as unobtrusively as she had arrived. No one took notice. She remained unaware of whose veins her donated blood would course through, and indeed she felt no compulsion to know. However, had she possessed that knowledge, her entire life trajectory would have been vastly different. Stay with me. For the child currently receiving Amara's blood is someone whose name you will undoubtedly recognize. Amara was employed on the night shift at St. Jude Children's Memorial Hospital from 7 in the evening until 7 in the morning, 5 nights a week. Occasionally, this extended to 6 nights when the need for overtime arose, which was a frequent occurrence. Her official designation was Certified Nursing Assistant, CNA, the lowest position on the hospital's hierarchical ladder. Her hourly wage was $15.40. Post-tax, this equated to approximately $2,100 per month, a sum insufficient to cover rent for a 1-bedroom apartment in a safe Chicago neighborhood. Her responsibilities, at least on paper, were straightforward: changing bed linens, emptying bedpans, sanitizing surfaces, taking vital signs, assisting patients with their meals, aiding them with their mobility to the restroom, and generally helping them perform tasks that illness had rendered difficult. A CNA is the individual who has the most direct physical contact with patients, yet receives the least compensation. Physicians typically engage with patients for mere minutes. Nurses attend to them during specific segments of their shifts. However, CNAs are an integral part of the patient's constant environment. They are present during the harrowing cries at 3 in the morning, the ones who offer a comforting hand to a child when their parents have returned home to rest, and the individuals who detect subtle changes in a patient's respiration before any electronic monitor can register them. Yet they are, in essence, invisible, not metaphorically, but literally. Doctors would stride past Amara each night as if she were mere furniture. Nurses would issue instructions without looking up from their charts. Family members of patients would sometimes discuss her as if she were not present and capable of hearing them. She was perceived as background noise, a physical presence there to perform menial tasks and offer support, enabling the more important individuals to concentrate on their critical duties. Her supervisor, Marcus Webb, ensured she understood her subordinate position. Marcus managed the night custodial and CNA operations with the zealousness of a man who viewed efficiency as a sacred principle and empathy as a wasteful expenditure of billable time. "You are CNA, Amara, not a counselor. Sanitize the area and proceed." He had reprimanded her 3 weeks prior when he observed her seated with a 6-year-old child who was unable to sleep. The child had been weeping, and Amara had been recounting a story about a bird that embarked on a transatlantic journey. Marcus had formally documented the incident. "You have 14 rooms requiring attention tonight," he had stated without making eye contact. "I do not concern myself with the child's distress. That is the purview of the nursing staff. Your role is to maintain cleanliness. Fulfill your duties, or I will find someone who will." Amara offered no rebuttal. She had long since learned that engaging in arguments with individuals holding authority over her livelihood was a luxury she could not afford, especially considering her mother's reliance on her. Denise Osei, age 67, was in the advanced stages of a slow, degenerative illness. She suffered from chronic kidney disease, stage 4. Her treatment required dialysis 3 times weekly. Even with the insurance Amara had painstakingly secured through her employment at the hospital, the out-of-pocket expenses were astronomical. Co-payments, prescription medications, transportation to the dialysis facility, and the specialized dietary regimen Denise needed but could not always afford accumulated to approximately $3,000 per month. This was a sum far beyond Amara's financial means. Yet, she managed to procure it somehow, accepting every available extra shift, subsisting on a single meal per day, and wearing her footwear until the soles literally disintegrated. She never disclosed her mother's condition to anyone at work, never complained, and never sought assistance. She simply arrived, performed her duties diligently, donated her blood once a month, and returned home. Each morning at 7:30, Amara exited the hospital and proceeded to the bus stop located 2 blocks to the east. Daily, she passed the same imposing billboard adorning Michigan Avenue, a colossal advertisement for a company named Medicor AI. The prominent slogan declared, "Saving children's lives with the power of AI." Positioned beneath this was an image of a smiling child, and below that, a corporate emblem valued in the billions. Amara walked past this advertisement every single day without a second thought. She remained unaware of the ownership of Medicor AI. She had no inkling that the company's founder had a son within the very institution she had just departed, and she was certainly oblivious to the fact that the child on the 7th floor, the one who received blood transfusions monthly, owed his continued existence to the life-sustaining fluid that flowed from her veins every 30 days. She simply walked, head down, jacket drawn tightly, another anonymous individual making her way home in a city that had never once inquired about her name. 3 floors above the location where Amara made her monthly blood donation, a vastly different environment prevailed. It was a realm that exuded the fragrance of fresh blossoms rather than chemical disinfectants. Here, hospital rooms were furnished with plush leather recliners adorned with imported Italian linens and offered a panoramic vista of Lake Michigan, a perspective rarely afforded to the average Chicagoan. This was the exclusive VIP pediatric wing, and within room 714, a 4-year-old boy named Elijah Fairfax was engrossed in cartoons at 2 in the afternoon as a bag of deep crimson blood slowly dripped into his fragile limb. His father sat attentively by his side. Julian Fairfax, 46 years old, was the visionary founder and chief executive officer of Medicor AI, a corporation valued at $4.2 billion, renowned for its application of artificial intelligence in diagnosing rare pediatric diseases across 47 nations. Julian's visage had graced the cover of Forbes magazine on 2 separate occasions. He had delivered speeches at Davos and had met with 3 distinct presidents. His groundbreaking technology had facilitated the early detection of leukemia in over 12,000 children who would have otherwise received a diagnosis far too late. Yet his own son was now facing a life-threatening illness. Elijah had been diagnosed with autoimmune hemolytic anemia, AIHA, a formidable condition wherein the body's own immune system turns against itself. The very defense mechanism designed to protect the organism begins to relentlessly attack and destroy its own red blood cells, essentially consuming them from within. Without regular blood transfusions, Elijah's body would be incapable of transporting sufficient oxygen, leading to a gradual and then rapid failure of his vital organs. The transfusions represented his sole chance of survival. Each month, he required a single unit of AB negative blood, meticulously matched to his specific type. Without this intervention, his hemoglobin levels would plummet to critically dangerous levels within a matter of weeks. Julian observed the slow descent of the blood, its assimilation into his son's arm, and the gradual return of color to Elijah's pale countenance. A familiar wave of intense frustration washed over him, a sentiment he experienced every single month in this room, a profound yet unfocused anger directed at the universe for bestowing upon him the capability to rescue countless other children, yet being powerless to save his own. Dr. Lorraine Mbeki entered the room. She held the esteemed position of head of pediatric hematology. A native of South Africa, she possessed a brilliant mind and an aura of profound composure, a characteristic often cultivated by medical professionals who have confronted the most severe cases. "How is he responding today?" Julian inquired, his gaze fixed on the intravenous drip. Well, his vital signs should stabilize within 24 hours, mirroring the outcome from last month. Dr. Mbeki examined the monitors, made a minute adjustment to a setting, and recorded her observations in the patient's chart. Julian leaned forward. How is it conceivable that I can finance an organization capable of diagnosing diseases in 47 countries, yet I am unable to secure a dependable blood donor for my own son? Doctor. Mbeki met his gaze, not with pity, but with a patient understanding. Because blood does not discriminate based on net worth, Mr. Fairfax. Its sole concern is compatibility. A B negative is an exceptionally rare blood type found in less than 1% of the population. We cannot artificially produce it, nor can we synthesize it. Furthermore, we are powerless to compel individuals to donate. All we can do is hope that the appropriate donor presents themselves. Julian's eyes remained fixed on the blood bag. It contained the blood of a stranger, the sole barrier standing between his son and a slow, inevitable demise. And he had no knowledge of its owner. "Who is donating this?" he asked. "Is it the same individual each time, Doctor?" Mbeki paused. "Donor information is strictly confidential, Mr. Fairfax. You are aware of this protocol. The blood bank operates under stringent principles of anonymity to safeguard donors from external pressures and to uphold the integrity of the system." Julian interrupted, his voice tinged with urgency. "I am not seeking to exert any pressure. I simply wish to express my gratitude. I want to ensure their continued support. I need to know that my son's life does not hinge on the intermittent decision of an anonymous stranger to donate." Dr. Mbeki placed her chart down. "I comprehend your concerns, and I can assure you of this not as his attending physician, but from my access to the donation records. Your son's primary donor has been consistent for over 18 months. The same individual. Every month, without fail, without prompting, and without knowledge of whose blood they are providing, or the specific reason for its necessity." Julian's jaw tightened perceptibly. 18 months. Someone had been safeguarding his son's life for a year and a half, and he remained unaware of their identity, their gender, their social standing, or their age. He knew nothing. "And I am unable to ascertain their identity." "No," Dr. Mbeki confirmed. "You cannot." Dr. Mbeki turned back to her computer screen, where a donor profile was displayed. It was a name she recognized as it appeared each month during the blood bank's processing of donations. She glanced at the name, then deliberately closed the file. "She will return next month. She always does." Julian failed to register the pronoun, oblivious to Dr. Mbeki's subtle slip. His focus remained intensely fixed on his son, on the blood bag, and on the stark, humbling realization that all his immense wealth, his cutting-edge technology, and his considerable influence were insufficient to accomplish what one anonymous individual was doing voluntarily. If you are finding this narrative compelling, consider subscribing and activating notifications, for the events that are about to unfold between Amara and the young boy in room 714 are destined to stir your emotions profoundly in the most uplifting manner possible. It was a Tuesday night, precisely 11:47. The 7th floor was enveloped in the characteristic quietude of a hospital after midnight. It was not an absolute silence, for the ambient hum of machinery, the soft chirping of medical monitors, and the faint, indistinct murmur of a television left on in a distant room were ever present. Amara propelled her cleaning cart down the corridor, systematically attending to each room, wiping surfaces, mopping floors, emptying waste receptacles, replenishing hand sanitizer dispensers, and moving on. This was a task she had performed countless times, a routine so ingrained she could execute it with her eyes closed. Room 714, the VIP suite, was next on her itinerary. She rapped lightly on the door. Receiving no response, she gently pushed it open. The room was cast in shadow, illuminated solely by the soft blue glow of the cardiac monitor and a small, rocket ship-shaped nightlight. Within the bed, a small boy sat propped against two pillows, wide awake, his eyes large, dark, and filled with apprehension. "Hello there," Amara said, her voice kept low. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" The boy regarded her, his gaze intently studying her face. He appeared remarkably diminutive for his age of 4, possessing a fragile thinness characteristic of sick children, not from malnourishment, but from the debilitating illness that was systematically depleting his body's capacity to generate essential blood. "I cannot sleep," he whispered. "It is too dark, and the beeping is frightening." Amara glanced towards the door. 13 more rooms awaited her attention that night. Marcus was scheduled to assess her progress at 1 in the morning. She was already falling behind her predetermined schedule. She should have moved on. Instead, she positioned her cart in the hallway, re-entered the room, and settled into the chair beside his bed. "What is your name?" she inquired. "Elijah." "Well, Elijah, I am Amara. And how about this? I will stay for a few minutes, just until you feel sleepy. Would that be acceptable to you?" He responded with a small, grateful nod. Amara began to share stories of the ocean in Ghana, describing how its waves produced a different resonance than those of Lake Michigan. She spoke of the fishermen who ventured out before dawn, returning with nets teeming with shimmering fish, and of her grandmother, who often remarked that the ocean held the memories of all those who had shown it kindness. Elijah listened intently, his eyelids growing heavy. Just before succumbing to sleep, he reached beneath his pillow and retrieved a sheet of paper, a drawing. It was rendered in crayon on standard printer paper, the kind of art only a 4-year-old can create. "This is the Blood Lady," he announced, holding it up for Amara to see. She observed the image, a rudimentary stick figure with brown skin and oversized hands cradling a red heart. "The Blood Lady?" Amara repeated. "She comes every month." Elijah gestured towards the intravenous pole beside his bed, where the empty blood bag from his most recent transfusion remained suspended. "I do not know who she is, but my daddy says someone gives me their blood so I can be strong. I call her the Blood Lady. She makes me feel better." Amara felt a profound shift within her chest, a sensation both warm and poignant. "Do you think the Blood Lady knows she is saving me?" Elijah inquired, his voice growing progressively softer as sleep claimed him. Amara gazed at this child, this tiny, courageous boy, with his crayon masterpiece and his rocket ship nightlight, his body engaged in a losing battle it could not win alone. "I am quite certain she does, my dear," she replied gently, "and I am equally certain she is delighted to be able to help." A faint smile touched Elijah's lips as he closed his eyes. Within moments he was fast asleep. Amara remained seated for a short while longer, her attention drawn to the drawing, then to the empty blood bag. She made no connection between the two. How could she? There was no apparent reason for her to do so. She was merely a CNA who cleaned rooms and donated blood in separate capacities within the same building, entirely unaware that these two distinct actions were threads woven into the same narrative. She gently adjusted Elijah's blanket, placed the drawing carefully on his bedside table, and quietly resumed her duties, pushing her cart back into the hallway. Amara had absolutely no conception that the child she had just tucked into bed was the same child she had been covertly sustaining for 19 months, and she remained utterly unaware that in 5 months' time the truth would be unveiled in the most devastating manner imaginable. Amara Osi arrived in America at the age of 17, armed with a full scholarship to pursue pre-medical studies at the University of Illinois, Chicago. Accompanying her was a suitcase heavier than she was, 2 textbooks she had already devoured cover to cover, and a dream so vast it struggled to be contained within her chest. Her singular ambition was to become a physician. Back in Accra, this aspiration had been her entire world. Her mother, Denise, had diligently worked 3 jobs to support Amara's secondary education, selling fabric at the marketplace by morning, cleaning offices in the afternoon, and taking in laundry by night, all to ensure her daughter's academic success and her eventual attainment of a profession Denise herself had never had the opportunity to pursue. On the day Amara received her scholarship confirmation, Denise held the letter with both hands, tears streaming down her face. These were not tears of sorrow, but the kind that flow when a lifelong prayer is finally answered in tangible form. "You are destined to heal people," Denise had declared. This is your calling. And Amara wholeheartedly believed it. She held on to this conviction through her challenging freshman year of college, when the academic rigor was immense and the accompanying solitude was even more profound. She maintained this belief through her sophomore year, when she consistently achieved Dean's List status for both semesters, and her organic chemistry professor remarked on the exceptional dexterity of her hands in the laboratory. She clung to this conviction through the initial half of her junior year as she commenced her clinical rotations and experienced for the first time a profound sense of belonging and purpose. Then her mother called. Denise's kidneys were failing. Both of them. She was diagnosed with stage 3 chronic kidney disease progressing rapidly towards stage 4. She required dialysis and medication, a course of treatment that incurred expenses far exceeding the income Denise had accumulated over a decade. Amara meticulously calculated the financial implications. She performed this analysis repeatedly, sitting on the floor of her dorm room at 2 in the morning, armed with a calculator and a formidable stack of bills. In the United States, the average annual cost of dialysis approximates $90,000. While insurance offers some coverage if one possesses it, Denise did not. Medicare eventually becomes applicable for kidney patients, but there is an inherent waiting period. Furthermore, co-payments, prescription medications costing as much as $400 per bottle, transportation expenses, and the necessity of adhering to specific dietary requirements, coupled with the myriad of minor costs that invariably accrue with a chronic illness, create a significant financial burden. Amara found herself in an impossible situation. She could not afford both her tuition and her mother's medical treatment. She could manage one but not both. And in truth, there was no real choice to be made. She withdrew from her studies at the conclusion of her junior year, just 3 semesters shy of graduation, 3 semesters away from applying to medical school, 3 semesters away from becoming Dr. Amara Osi. Instead, she pursued certification as a CNA, the quickest route she could find, as hospitals were perpetually in need of such personnel, and the salary was sufficient to cover Denise's co-payments, provided Amara abstained from any personal expenditures. Although she was confined to a medical facility, and despite not being a physician, nor ever able to pursue that path, she remained within the building where wellness was cultivated. She was still near enough to sense its presence, even if her hands were unable to practice the art of healing. Some individuals might have harbored resentment. Some might have spent each shift lamenting the career they had lost. Amara, however, did not. This was not to say she was unaffected by her loss. She felt its weight daily. Every instance a physician issued an instruction she could have given, every time she replaced a bedpan, knowing she could have been reviewing a patient's chart instead, every time she stood in an elevator beside younger medical residents adorned in the white coat she should have been wearing. The loss was palpable. Yet her mother had imparted a valuable lesson long ago, one that prevented bitterness from taking root. When Amara was 14, her mother, Denise, had accompanied her to a blood donation drive held at a community center in Accra. It was Amara's inaugural time donating. She felt apprehensive, daunted by the needle, fearful of the sight of blood. Denise had clasped her hand and uttered words Amara would cherish for the remainder of her life. Blood is the one thing rich and poor share equally. When you give it, you give life itself. From that day forward, Amara had been a regular donor. In Accra, in Chicago, in every city she had ever traversed, not out of obligation, nor for remuneration, but because she possessed AB negative blood, a rare type. This designation signified scarcity. It meant her blood was perpetually in demand, and it meant that each time she reclined in that chair and allowed her vein to be accessed, someone, somewhere, would continue to live who might otherwise have succumbed. The identity of that recipient was unknown to her, and intentionally so. That was the essence of it. The act of giving was devoid of the need for recognition. It was an embodiment of responsibility. If one possessed something uncommon, something life-sustaining, something that required no more than an hour and a fleeting sense of lightheadedness, to withhold it was not merely selfish, it was ethically reprehensible. Her mother had instilled this belief, and Amara embraced it with the same conviction she held for the act of breathing. Consequently, she diligently performed her duties. She maintained the cleanliness of the rooms. She offered solace to children during moments of darkness. She managed her mother's mounting medical expenses, and once every lunar cycle, she freely offered her blood to unknown individuals. Amara had relinquished her medical school aspirations, but her commitment to the practice of medicine remained unwavering. She embodied it each night in the spaces she tidied, with every patient she comforted, and monthly with each unit of blood she selflessly donated. This narrative is poised for a transformative shift. Subscribe presently and activate notifications to ensure you do not miss the unfolding events. It was precisely 4:37 in the afternoon on a Thursday. On the 7th floor of St. Jude Children's Memorial, a critical situation was unfolding. Elijah Fairfax had been in good spirits that very morning. He had consumed his breakfast, busied himself with drawing, and posed the familiar question to his father, Julian, about when he could depart for home, to which Julian invariably replied, "Soon, buddy, soon." However, by midday, Elijah's complexion had taken on the pallor of aged parchment. His eyes, typically vibrant and restless, had become listless. His respiration grew shallow, rapid, and irregular. Dr. Mbeki received the page at 1:15. By 1:30, she was in the room, reviewing his blood work, her expression conveying to Julian the gravity of the situation before she uttered a single word. "He's experiencing a hemolytic crisis, doctor," Mbeki stated. "His body is destroying red blood cells at an unprecedented rate. His hemoglobin count has dropped to 5.2 and continues to fall." "What does that signify?" Julian inquired, though a part of him already grasped the grim prognosis. "It means his organs are not receiving adequate oxygen. If we do not elevate his hemoglobin within the next 6 hours, we face organ failure, commencing with his kidneys, followed by his heart." Julian's grip tightened on the bed rail, his knuckles turning stark white. "Then administer a transfusion. Do it immediately." "We are without the necessary blood, Mr. Fairfax." Those 5 words struck him with the force of a physical blow. "What do you mean you don't have the blood?" A B negative is the rarest blood type in the nation. Less than 1% of Americans possess it. The national blood supply is critically depleted, particularly for uncommon types. We have contacted every regional blood bank within 200 miles. None have AB negative in stock. None. Julian stared at her, incredulous. "This is a $400 million hospital. You are telling me you cannot procure a unit of blood? I am informing you that financial resources cannot conjure blood that does not exist," Dr. Mbeki responded, her voice steady, though her eyes betrayed her distress. "We have precisely 0 units of AB negative on hand, our only consistent donor for the past 2 years. She paused, unable to complete the sentence. "What?" Julian pressed. "Our only donor what?" Dr. Mbeki's gaze shifted between Julian, Elijah, and the monitor displaying his son's dropping hemoglobin levels in real time. "I will make some inquiries," she said softly, and then departed the room. The unspoken words Dr. Mbeki withheld would have irrevocably altered events, but her silence nearly cost Elijah his life. It was 9:42 in the evening. Amara learned of the dire situation. She was on the 3rd floor replenishing supply cabinets when 2 nurses rounded the corner, conversing in the urgent, clipped manner that hospital personnel adopt when faced with a crisis. A pediatric VIP on the 7th floor, a 4-year-old in hemolytic crisis. They require AB negative and no one has it. They've been contacting blood banks all day. Nothing. The second nurse shook her head. That poor child. If they don't find a match by midnight, they're discussing an emergency exchange transfusion, and even that is a long shot without the correct blood type. They turned the corner and disappeared. They failed to notice Amara standing nearby with an armload of bed linens. A B negative. Amara set the sheets down deliberately. Her heart began to pound with an intensity it hadn't experienced in a considerable time. Not with panic, but with a deep, resonant thrum, the rhythm of absolute certainty. She possessed AB negative blood. She had donated 3 weeks prior. The established protocol dictated a minimum waiting period of 8 weeks between donations, 56 days. She was at 21 days. Donating now would be premature. Her iron levels might not have sufficiently recuperated. She risked feeling dizzy, even fainting. In infrequent instances, donating too often could lead to severe anemia, necessitating hospitalization for the donor. Amara was fully aware of these risks. She had donated frequently enough to know the guidelines by heart. She also understood that somewhere above her, a child was in peril due to the scarcity of her unique blood type within the entire city. She proceeded to the blood bank and gently pushed open the door. The familiar nurse, who always drew her blood, looked up in surprise. "Amara, you're not due for another 5 weeks." "I know. I'm here because I overheard you need AB negative. I have it. Take mine." The nurse shook her head. "I cannot. You donated 3 weeks ago. Your hemoglobin might not be sufficiently elevated. If I draw your blood now and your levels plummet, I would be placing you at risk. There are protocols. I am aware of the regulations," Amara stated, her voice calm and resolute, the tone of someone who had made an unshakable decision before even entering the room. "I also know that somewhere within this hospital a child is fighting for their life because no one possesses what I do. Therefore, take my blood. I will accept the consequences." The nurse hesitated. She consulted her screen, then looked at Amara. Subsequently, she initiated a page for Dr. Mbeki. Dr. Mbeki arrived 4 minutes later. Upon seeing Amara, something shifted in her expression, a profound heaviness that she could not articulate. Dr. Mbeki understood. She knew precisely where this blood was destined. She knew the name of the child. She knew the name of the father. And she recognized that the woman standing before her, clad in worn scrubs and scuffed shoes, offering her own well-being at potential personal cost, had been instrumental in sustaining that child's life for nearly 2 years without ever being informed. She longed to speak, to reveal everything to Amara. She wished she could say, "The boy you are saving is the same child to whom you read bedtime stories last Tuesday, the very same child who presented you with a drawing referring to you as the Story Lady. His father possesses a net worth of $4.2 billion, and he has no awareness of your existence, yet the protocols were established for a reason. Donor anonymity served to shield individuals like Amara from coercion, manipulation, or exploitation. And Dr. Mbeki had taken an oath to uphold these rules, even as every fiber of her being urged her to defy them." "Do you comprehend the risks?" Dr. Mbeki inquired. "I do," Amara affirmed. "And you wish to proceed?" "I need to proceed. There is a critical distinction." Dr. Mbeki regarded her for a long moment before nodding. She gestured for a chair. The needle was inserted. Amara's blood, dark, warm, and laden with the antibodies uniquely suited to one small boy 3 floors above, began to fill the collection bag. She closed her eyes, experiencing the familiar sensation of the withdrawal, the subtle lightheadedness that invariably accompanied donating too soon, too much, or too frequently. She was indifferent. Her mother's words echoed within her as potent as a heartbeat. Blood is the one thing rich and poor share equally. When you give it, you give life itself. 3 floors below room 714, Amara sat in a donation chair, her eyes closed, her arm extended, willingly relinquishing the very element her body most urgently required. 3 floors above her, the blood bank contacted pediatrics. 1 unit of AB negative, fresh, available, ready. Dr. Mbeki personally transported the bag. She entrusted its delivery to no one else. She ascended the stairs, deeming the elevator too sluggish. She entered room 714, where Julian Fairfax sat by his son's bedside, holding the boy's small hand, his face ashen with a profound fear that wealth could not assuage. She hung the bag, connected the tubing, and initiated the infusion. Julian watched as the blood entered his son's arm. A dark crimson stream, warm, another's life flowing into his child. He did not know whose life it was. He simply observed. Elijah's breathing gradually deepened, not alarmingly, but in the manner of a body finally receiving vital sustenance. His color began to change. the waxy pallor receding, replaced by a warmer, more vital hue. His fingers, cold to the touch for hours, started to regain their warmth. Julian pressed his forehead against his son's hand. He was rendered speechless, his capacity for language stolen by the overwhelming wave of relief. 3 floors below, Amara rested in the recovery area. The room seemed to spin gently. Her arms felt heavy. The nurse had provided juice and crackers, along with strict instructions to remain stationary for 30 minutes. She was dizzy and fatigued, her body signaling the strain of excessive donation. She lay there in the quiet of the blood bank, gazing at the ceiling, listening to the low hum of the refrigeration units housing the collected donations. She was unaware that her blood was at that very moment drawing a 4-year-old boy back from the brink. She did not know that the boy's father was weeping 3 floors above her head. She did not know that the drawing of the story lady was placed on Elijah's bedside table, adjacent to the IV pole supporting the bag bearing her identity. She was oblivious to it all. She simply lay there, experiencing dizziness and weariness, yet possessed of a quiet certainty that she had acted rightly. 2 individuals within the same structure, bound by shared blood, separated by 3 floors, and a veil of anonymity poised to be breached. The following morning, Julian Fairfax arrived at Dr. Mbekki's office before she had even finished her morning coffee. "I must know the identity of the donor," he stated with an air of accustomed authority, as if accustomed to receiving unquestioned answers, like a man who signed checks that funded hospital expansions, like someone who had never been denied by those dependent on his financial support. Dr. Mbekki placed her cup down, her expression unwavering. "You are aware that I cannot provide that information, Mr. Fairfax. My son nearly perished last night. He nearly died because we ran out of blood. And you are informing me that a single individual, one person in this entire city, has been sustaining his life for 2 years, and I am not permitted to know their name." "That is precisely what I am informing you." Julian stood and paced to the window, then back again. He was a man who solved problems for a living, who constructed systems, who rectified issues. And at this moment, the paramount concern was to bridge the chasm between his son's survival and the name he was forbidden to learn. "There are legal statutes governing this," Dr. Mbekki continued. "Donor anonymity is not merely a suggestion, it is a federal protection. Its existence is predicated on the prevention of donor pressure, harassment, and guilt-tripping into donating beyond their physical capacity. The system functions effectively because donors trust that their privacy will be respected. If we betray that trust, donors will cease to come. And if donors cease to come, children like Elijah will perish." Julian turned to face her. "I have no intention of pressuring anyone. I wish to express my gratitude. I want to ensure they are well provided for. I want to guarantee that my son has a reliable source of blood going forward." "And I comprehend your desire," Dr. Mbekki replied. "However, your wishes do not supersede their rights. This individual elected to donate anonymously. That signifies their choice not to be identified, and honoring that decision is not optional. Not for you, not for me, not for anyone." Julian's jaw tightened. He retrieved his phone, accessed his banking application, and presented the screen to Dr. Mbekki. $5 million readily transferred to this hospital's general fund. All I require is a name." Dr. Mbekki gazed at the screen, then at the sum, and finally at Julian, her expression evoking a profound shift within his chest. "And if I were to divulge that name for $5 million, what would that render me? What would that render this hospital?" she inquired. "A facility where privacy is commodified, where the affluent can procure access to anyone's personal information provided the transaction is cleared." She rose from her seat. "Mr. Fairfax, I am deeply empathetic to your situation. Your son is my patient and I care for him. However, I will not sell a donor's identity. Not for $5 million, not for $50 million. The day this hospital places a price tag on an individual's right to privacy is the day we cease to function as a hospital and become merely a marketplace." Julian put his phone away. His hands trembled, not from anger, but from a more profound realization. For the first time in his adult life, he had encountered something his wealth genuinely could not procure. He departed without another word. Julian could not purchase the answer. However, he was on the cusp of an accidental discovery that would dismantle every preconceived notion he held regarding who saves lives and who merits salvation. In the same week Julian was attempting to acquire a name, Amara found herself in a different physician's office, receiving news that would devastate her. Her mother's nephrologist, a compassionate man with weary eyes, delivered difficult prognoses with the gentle yet unvarnished honesty characteristic of skilled physicians. Denise's kidneys had failed completely, both of them, of stage 5, end-stage renal disease. Dialysis was no longer sufficient. A transplant was imperative. Without one, the doctor estimated she had approximately 6 months, perhaps less. Amara sat in the plastic chair, absorbing the information without shedding a tear. Not yet. She would reserve that for later. The financial figures struck her with the force of an impact. A kidney transplant incurred costs ranging from $250,000 to $400,000. Insurance would cover a portion, but Denise's policy had significant coverage gaps. After accounting for all expenses, including co-pays, medications, post-operative care, and rehabilitation, Amara faced an out-of-pocket burden of approximately $120,000. Her earnings were $15.40 per hour. She possessed $2,300 in savings. She had no credit cards, no property to leverage, and no one from whom to borrow. That evening, she sat at her kitchen table, a calculator and a legal pad before her, attempting to reconcile the impossible numbers. She could work additional shifts 7 days a week. She could forgo meals. She could sell a car she didn't own. Even with all these sacrifices, the amount remained unattainable. Then another consideration emerged, a quieter, colder one. She could cease donating blood, not permanently, but temporarily. Her body was still recovering from the earlier, premature donation. She had felt fatigued for weeks, occasionally dizzy. Her iron levels were low. The blood bank nurse had advised her to rest, consume more red meat, and adhere to the full 8-week interval before her next donation. If she continued to push herself, donating on top of working double shifts, her own health would deteriorate, and if she faltered, there would be no one to care for Denise. But if she stopped donating, somewhere within this hospital, a child with AB negative blood would have one fewer recourse, one less opportunity, one less month of guaranteed survival. She was faced with a choice between her mother's life and an unknown child's existence. Amara drove to the dialysis center the following morning. Denise was seated in her chair, connected to the machine that cleansed her blood 3 times weekly, her kidneys no longer capable of the task. She appeared diminished since the previous month, thinner, more fragile. Amara explained the necessity of a transplant, the associated costs, and the insurmountable financial challenge. She refrained from mentioning the blood donations, but Denise, as mothers often do, sensed it. "You're contemplating stopping, aren't you?" Amara looked away. "Mama, I need to focus on you right now." "Don't you dare stop giving blood because of me, Amara." Denise's voice, though weak, carried an unyielding resolve. "The day you stop giving is the day you stop being who you are." "But Mama, I can't lose you." "You won't lose me." Denise reached out and took Amara's hand, her grip frail, but her gaze fierce. "But don't save me by letting someone else's child die. That is not the person I raised. That is not who you are." Amara clasped her mother's hand tightly, rendered speechless, for any response would have been a falsehood. That night, at 3 a.m, Amara sat in her car in the hospital parking lot. The engine was off, the windows fogged with condensation. She had just completed a 12-hour shift, and her exhaustion was so profound that her bones ached. She wept. Not the genteel sort of crying, but the raw, visceral kind, where one's entire body shakes uncontrollably, breathing becomes difficult, and sounds emerge that are alien to language as one buries their face in the steering wheel. She wept because she was financially destitute. Her mother was nearing the end of her life. She was utterly exhausted, and no one in the world knew her name. She wept because she had donated blood 24 times without ever receiving a single expression of gratitude. While she did not seek thanks, she also yearned not to be invisible any longer. She despised herself for this desire, believing that seeking acknowledgement for an act of kindness somehow diminished its sincerity. She wept in the darkness of an empty parking lot at 3 in the morning, unseen by anyone. It was 1:13 in the afternoon on a Tuesday when Julian Fairfax's world was irrevocably altered. He had arrived at the hospital unannounced, unable to sleep, his mind fixated on the hemolytic crisis, unable to silence Dr. Mbekki's words, "We don't have the blood." He had driven to St. Jude in the dead of night to be with Elijah, to observe his son's breathing, to count the rise and fall of his small chest, and to reassure himself that his son was still alive. As he walked from the elevator towards the VIP wing, he passed the blood bank. The door was ajar. The hallway was deserted, and 2 nurses inside were engaged in conversation. He would not have paused nor listened had one of them not uttered a name that captured his attention. "Amara's back again. She's come in 3 times this month just to check the schedule. Wants to confirm her next donation appointment." The other nurse chuckled softly. "That woman is truly remarkable. She's our only regular AB negative donor. She has been for 2 years now. Shows up like clockwork. Never misses. She even came in early last month when we had that emergency." Julian stopped walking. "She's the reason that Fairfax kid is still alive, you know. He would have died 3 times over without her. 24 donations in 24 months, all anonymous. She's never once inquired about the recipient." Julian stood frozen in the hallway, as if struck by an unseen force. His feet were rooted to the spot. His heart pounded so loudly he was convinced the nurses could hear it. Amara, a B negative. 24 donations. The Fairfax child. His son. His son's blood. His son's life. A woman named Amara. A certified nursing assistant. Julian's mind raced. He recognized the name, not through personal acquaintance, but in the manner one knows a word seen countless times without truly processing its meaning. Amara, the name on a forgotten badge, the face passed in corridors unnoticed, the woman with the cleaning cart perpetually present yet unseen. He departed from the blood donation center, his steps measured, his hands betraying a tremor. Turning a corner, then another, guided by the hum of machinery and the distant squeak of wheels on linoleum, he arrived at the 3rd floor east corridor. And there she was. Amara, on her knees, tending to a spill. A patient in room 312 had suffered a significant nosebleed, leaving a crimson stain on the floor. Amara was diligently scrubbing it with a rag and a bottle of hydrogen peroxide. Julian stood at the hallway's terminus, observing her. He watched her hands, encased in blue nitrile gloves, stretched taut over fingers already showing signs of dryness beneath. He noted her knees resting on the damp floor, her hair pulled back in a severe bun, her scrubs faded from navy to an indeterminate hue. Her focus was entirely on the stain, her movements methodical, imbued with the quiet dedication of someone taking pride in even the most mundane of tasks. She was unaware of his presence. Standing in that silent hallway at midnight, Julian comprehended that he had walked past this woman hundreds of times. Hundreds. He had passed her in the lobby, in the elevator, outside his son's room. He had looked through her as one looks through glass. She was mere background, a piece of the scenery, insignificant. And yet, she was the reason his son was alive. He recalled his words to Dr. Mbeki. "I'll donate $5 million. $5 million for a name." And here was the name, embodied by this woman, on her knees, cleaning a hospital floor for $15 an hour, who had been anonymously donating her own blood monthly for 2 years to sustain his child's life. Julian Fairfax had established a company valued at $4.2 billion, dedicated to saving children's lives. His visage had graced magazine covers. He'd been hailed as a visionary, a disruptor, a genius, and his son's survival was owed to a woman he had never bothered to acknowledge. He remained there for a considerable duration, silent, unmoving, simply observing and experiencing an internal expansion for which he had no word. It was a complex emotion, a blend of shame, gratitude, and awe, underscored by the humbling realization that the most vital individual in his son's life had been invisible to him for 2 years. He then turned and departed. It was not the appropriate moment. He lacked the suitable words, unsure of what to say, how to articulate it, or if anything he could offer would suffice. But everything had irrevocably shifted. Julian Fairfax now grasped the truth. However, discerning the truth and knowing how to act upon it are distinct matters. His subsequent course of action would determine whether a billionaire's gratitude was a genuine boon or a subtle snare. Sleep eluded Julian that night. He returned to his penthouse overlooking the lake, sat in the darkness, and contemplated the woman on her knees. The following morning he contacted Dr. Mbeki. His voice was transformed, quieter, devoid of the urgency and entitlement that had characterized their prior conversation. "I know who the donor is." A pause from the other end. "I didn't hack anything. I didn't bribe anyone. I overheard 2 nurses discussing it. They were unaware of my presence. Her name is Amara. She's a certified nursing assistant at your hospital." Dr. Mbeki exhaled slowly. "Mr. Fairfax, I need you to understand something. She is unaware. She doesn't know it's your son. She doesn't know whose blood she has been providing. She arrives each month, donates, and returns to her duties without questioning anything." "I know," Julian affirmed. "I observed her last night. She was cleaning a floor." A protracted silence ensued. Then Dr. Mbeki spoke, her voice carrying a gravity Julian had not previously detected. "There are aspects you should be aware of concerning her," she stated. "Things I can disclose because they are not protected medical records, and frankly, because you need to understand the essence of this woman before you determine your next steps." She proceeded to recount details any hospital staff member could have provided had he ever bothered to inquire. Amara's initial pursuit of a medical degree, her withdrawal in her 3rd year to finance her mother's kidney treatment, her mother's current stage 5 renal failure necessitating a transplant, Amara's extensive work hours to cover dialysis expenses, her consistent blood donations since her teenage years, and her decision to donate during the crisis against medical advice and at personal risk upon learning of a child requiring AB negative blood, unable to ignore such a need. "She didn't know it was Elijah," Dr. Mbeki added softly. "She only heard a child was in distress. That was sufficient for her." Julian remained seated in his expensive office chair, the cityscape of Chicago a panoramic backdrop. He contemplated a woman whose annual income was less than the cost of his chair, a woman who had sacrificed her aspiration of becoming a doctor to care for her mother, a woman who donated her blood monthly, enduring its toll, a woman who cleaned the hospital floors where his son recuperated, never once revealing her pivotal role in his survival. He considered his company, MedTech Core AI, whose mission was to save children's lives through artificial intelligence, a tagline emblazoned on business cards, billboards, and the foundation of a $4.2 billion empire predicated on technology's ability to resolve human health challenges. Yet his son's well-being had not been secured by technology. It had been sustained by a human being, a needle in her arm, and an unwavering conviction that one cannot disregard a person in peril if one possesses the capacity to assist. Julian Fairfax had amassed a fortune on the premise that technology saves lives, but his son lived because of a woman earning $15 an hour who altruistically donated her blood. It was 6:07 in the morning in Chicago in November, a biting cold that permeated clothing and settled into the bones. The sky remained dark. Parking lot lights cast elongated amber pools onto the asphalt. Amara exited the hospital with her usual haste, head down, thin jacket drawn tight, bag slung over one shoulder, knowing that missing the 6:20 bus would mean a 40-minute wait for the next. She did not notice the man leaning against the black car near the east exit, nor would she have recognized him. Julian Fairfax was not someone whose appearance she had any reason to commit to memory. "Excuse me." Amara paused and turned, her gaze falling upon the man. He wore an expensive coat, his eyes bore fatigue, and his hands were pocketed. He did not appear threatening, rather disoriented. "Can I help you? Are you Amara? Amara Osei?" A tightening sensation gripped her chest. Strangers knowing one's full name rarely boded well. Yes. Who are you? Julian did not answer directly. Not yet. Instead, he posed a question. Why do you do it? Amara blinked. Do what? Donate blood every month for 2 years. Why? The tightness in her chest turned to ice. How do you know about that? Please. Julian's voice was soft, almost delicate, as if handling something fragile. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just need to understand. Why do you do it? Amara studied his face, her innate ability to read people honed by years of caring for children unable to articulate their pain. This man was not a threat. He was something else entirely, barely holding himself together. Because I can, she replied simply. I have a rare blood type, AB negative. There aren't many of us, and people die when the supply dwindles. So I show up. That's all. That's all, Julian echoed, his breath misting in the cold air. That's all? He fell silent for a moment. My name is Julian Fairfax. I have a son named Elijah. He's 4 years old. He's been a patient at this hospital for over 2 years. He has a condition that destroys his red blood cells. Without regular transfusions, he dies. And the only blood type that matches his is AB negative. Amara felt the ground beneath her shift, not physically, but internally, a profound internal movement she couldn't yet define. For 24 months, Julian continued, one person has been keeping my son alive. One donor, the same person every single month. Anonymous, consistent, never missed once. The hospital wouldn't tell me who, they couldn't. Donor confidentiality. He met her gaze. It's you, Amara. You're the one. The parking lot was unnervingly quiet, save for the distant hum of traffic and the call of a bird in the pre-dawn darkness. Amara stood motionless. Your son, she managed, her voice trembling. What room is he in? 714, 7th floor, VIP wing, the room with the rocket ship nightlight. A sensation akin to a fissure opened within her chest, not one of breaking, but of widening, like a seed cracking to allow new growth. Elijah, she whispered. You know him. I clean his room on the night shift. He can't sleep sometimes. I tell him stories. Julian's expression altered, a subtle collapse behind his eyes. He talks about a blood lady, Amara continued, her voice now visibly shaking. He calls the blood bag the blood lady. He drew me a picture once, a stick figure with brown skin and large hands holding a red heart. He said the blood lady comes every month and makes him feel better. She looked at Julian, her eyes glistening. The blood lady. That's me. I'm the blood lady. Julian nodded, unable to speak. Amara raised a hand to her mouth, standing in the freezing hospital parking lot in her thin jacket, the reality of 24 months of anonymous giving suddenly crystallizing. It was no longer an abstract concept of blood in a cooler or a number in a database, but a specific child, a boy with dark eyes and a rocket ship nightlight who feared the dark, who called her the story lady and drew pictures of an unseen benefactor sustaining his life, and that benefactor was her and had always been her. I didn't save your son, Mr. Fairfax, Amara said through her tears. I just gave blood. Anyone with AB negative could have done the same. But they didn't, Julian's voice cracked. For 24 months, nobody else showed up. Only you. He stepped closer. Then, Julian Fairfax, a man of $4.2 billion, a man whose name adorned buildings and magazine covers and hospital wings, did something that stunned Amara into silence. He knelt on the cold asphalt in his expensive coat, his knees touching the ground. Yet, he did not kneel in supplication. I walked past you, he said, his voice raw with emotion. 100 times. I walked past you in the hallway, in the elevator, outside my son's room. 100 times, and I never saw you. I never once looked at your face. I never once asked your name. You were saving my son's life, and I didn't even know you existed. Please, stand up, Amara pleaded. Sir, please. I'm sorry, Julian replied, his contrition extending beyond Elijah. He was sorry for every unseen individual, he had ever overlooked, every certified nursing assistant whose name he had never learned, every cleaner whose cart he had navigated around without a glance. He was sorry for 46 years of not seeing. Amara gently took his arm, her touch as tender as she might offer a patient or comfort a child, and helped him rise. They stood there, two individuals from disparate worlds, in a frigid parking lot at 6 in the morning, both weeping, both silent, for sometimes words are insufficient to convey the depth of connection when one person finally truly sees another for the very first time. Julian regained his composure first, dabbing his face, clearing his throat, and speaking with the practiced cadence of a man accustomed to problem solving. I want to help you. I want to pay for your mother's transplant. I want to establish a fund. I want to get you back into medical school. Whatever you need, name it. I'll make it happen today. Amara looked at him, and for the first time in their exchange, her eyes were not filled with sadness, but with a sharp clarity. No, Julian blinked. No, I don't want your money, Mr. Fairfax. He stared at her, unaccustomed to such a response. In his world, desires were typically quantifiable, prices were negotiable, and every challenge succumbed to a sufficiently large sum. I'm offering you everything you need, he stated carefully. Your mother's surgery, your education, a better life. And I'm saying no. Amara's voice was firm. If I accept money for blood, it ceases to be a gift. It becomes a transaction. And my mother taught me that blood is sacred, not for sale, not to you, not to anyone. Julian opened his mouth, closed it, then reopened it. Then what do you want? He implored. Because I have to do something. I can't just walk away from this and pretend you're not the reason my son is alive. Amara was silent for a moment, her gaze sweeping over the hospital behind her, the building she entered each night and departed each morning, the place where she mopped floors, changed sheets, held hands, and remained unseen by those who governed it. You want to thank me, she said. Then change how your hospital treats people like me. Not just me. Every CNA, every aide, every transporter, every person who cleans up after your doctors, empties the trash, brings the meals, and holds the hands, and never receives a thank you, never receives a living wage, never gets seen. She met his eyes directly. You built a company that saves children with technology. That's wonderful, but there are people in this building right now saving children with their bare hands for $15 an hour, and nobody knows their names. You want to do something? Start there. Julian stood in the biting cold, looking at a woman who had just refused more wealth than she would earn in a lifetime, a woman who sought not his gratitude but justice, not for herself alone, but for all those who shared her circumstances. For the first time in a considerable period, Julian Fairfax felt a profound sense of insignificance, not in a negative way, but akin to the feeling of standing before something vastly greater than oneself, realizing the immense capacity for personal growth still required. Amara did not desire Julian's wealth, but his response to her words would catalyze transformations far beyond a single institution. This marked the turning point. If you haven't yet subscribed, you'll want to witness what unfolds next. The following afternoon, Julian escorted Amara to the 7th floor. She had changed from her scrubs into the best attire she possessed, a sweater gifted by her mother and a pair of clean jeans. She felt out of place in the VIP wing, as she always did, but today was different. Today, her purpose was not cleaning. Julian opened the door to room 714. Elijah was propped up in bed, drawing. His color was good, the recent transfusion proving effective. He looked up as the door opened, his face illuminating with the unadulterated joy only a 4-year-old can express. Miss Amara, you're here in the daytime. He spoke as if this were the most extraordinary event, for to him, Amara existed solely in the nighttime, the woman who appeared in the dark with a cleaning cart and tales of the ocean. Hi, Elijah. Amara's voice was steady, though her eyes betrayed emotion. How are you feeling today, good? Better. The blood lady came again. She glanced at the IV pole, the empty bag, the tubing that had delivered her blood into this child's system. She always comes. Julian stepped forward, crouching beside his son's bed. "Buddy, I want to tell you something. You know how you always talk about the blood lady, the person who gives you blood every month?" Elijah nodded. "She makes me strong." "That's right, she does." Julian looked from Amara to his son, then back again. "Well, the blood lady is here. She's standing right there." Elijah's gaze shifted between Amara and his father, then back to Amara. A 4-year-old's mind operates without the filters of adult social calculation or hesitation, possessing a direct conduit from comprehension to expression. Elijah looked at Amara, the storyteller of fishermen and oceans, and at the empty blood bag, the unseen guardian of his life, his eyes widening. "You're the blood lady and the story lady. You're two people." Amara laughed, a brief, fractured sound that was a blend of amusement and sorrow. "No, sweetheart, I'm just one person. I just do two things." Elijah stared at her, his expression one of pure, unadulterated wonder, the kind that precedes the world's imposition of cynicism. Then he opened his arms. Amara crossed the room and enveloped the small boy in a tight embrace, holding him with the same profound presence she offered her mother, and her mother had offered her, as if pouring every ounce of her being through her skin into his. Julian stood behind them, silent, tears streaming down his face, his jaw clenched, his hands balled into fists at his sides, not out of sadness, but from witnessing something sacred, a realization that struck him profoundly. Elijah pulled back, reached under his pillow, and produced a creased and worn piece of paper, having slept on, and been carried around and shown to every nurse who entered the room. The drawing, the blood lady, a stick figure with brown skin and large hands, holding a red heart. He had drawn Amara long before anyone knew her identity. A child had recognized her before a billionaire ever did. "This is you," Elijah declared, holding the drawing aloft for Amara to see. "I made it for you. I was saving it because I knew you'd come one day." Amara accepted the drawing, holding it with both hands, her vision blurred by incessant tears. A stick figure, crayon on printer paper, brown skin, large hands, a red heart. It was the most precious gift anyone had ever bestowed upon her. Julian Fairfax returned home that night, unable to sleep, not from worry this time, but from shame, and from a phrase that replayed in his mind like an inescapable melody: "Change how your hospital treats people like me." He had built a $4.2 billion company on the principle that systems hold greater importance than individuals, that rectifying the system rectifies the problem. Amara had articulated the same sentiment in a cold parking lot, without charge. And so, he set about fixing the system. It consumed 3 weeks. 3 weeks of meetings, phone calls, legal consultations, and financial deliberations, interspersed with discussions with the hospital board that ranged from polite to contentious, bordering on veiled threats. However, Julian Fairfax possessed an exceptional aptitude for achieving objectives once his resolve was set. His first decisive action was to fund the Invisible Heroes Initiative, a program specifically designed for CNAs, patient care assistants, transporters, housekeeping staff, and all other frontline hospital workers who provided direct patient contact daily and earned less than $20 an hour. The initiative comprised 3 key elements: a $4 per hour across-the-board wage increase for all support staff at St. Jude Children's Memorial, a professional development fund to cover certification courses, continuing education, and skills training, and an annual recognition ceremony wherein frontline workers would be nominated by patients and families for their exceptional care. A critical fact often overlooked is that the United States faces a severe shortage of CNAs. With approximately 1.4 million nursing assistants nationally, the field suffers from one of the highest turnover rates across all professions, with around 45% of CNAs leaving their positions within the first year, not due to a lack of dedication, but an inability to sustain themselves financially. The average CNA earns between $14 and $17 an hour. In urban centers like Chicago, these wages fall within the poverty bracket. It is possible to work full-time as a CNA and still qualify for food assistance programs. You can diligently attend to patients, manage bedpans, precisely monitor their vital signs, and offer comfort to someone in their final moments at 3 in the morning, yet still be unable to afford your own health coverage. The core issue isn't the dedicated staff. It's an infrastructure that views them as expendable. Julian grasped this profound reality with newfound clarity, a realization that dawned because Amara hadn't sought a personal solution for her life. Instead, she implored him to reshape the world she inhabited. Julian's second undertaking was the establishment of the Denise O'Shea Medical Scholarship, a tribute to Amara's mother. Inaugurated with an initial endowment of $10 million, this scholarship was accessible to any frontline healthcare professional. Certified nursing assistants, transport technicians, indeed anyone in a support capacity within a hospital setting who aspired to pursue medical studies. It provided full tuition, a comprehensive stipend, and carried no hidden obligations. Julian had kept the scholarship's name a secret from Amara, a choice made without seeking her consent, for certain acts of homage require no permission. His third endeavor was the most ambitious. He reallocated a segment of Medicor AI's research funding towards the development of a national registry for rare blood types. This digital platform would serve as a vital link, connecting individuals with rare blood types to patients in urgent need. It featured real-time matching capabilities and automated alerts, creating a system designed to prevent any hospital from experiencing a shortage of AB negative, B negative, or any other scarce blood type due to a lack of donor identification. The very technology that propelled Julian's success was now being harnessed to address the critical issue that had nearly cost his son his life. The official unveiling took place in the main auditorium of St. Jude Children's Memorial on a Thursday afternoon in March. Julian stood at the lectern, addressing an audience of 400 comprising physicians, nurses, board members, media representatives, and hospital staff from all departments. In the third row sat Marcus Webb, his arms crossed tightly and his jaw set. His attendance had been declared compulsory, though the reason remained unstated. Julian adjusted the microphone. "I founded a company with the mission of saving children through technology," he commenced. "My image has graced magazine covers, and I've been hailed as a visionary. I've delivered keynote addresses at conferences where attendees paid $5,000 per seat for insights into innovation. And just 6 months ago, my son's life hung in the balance because this very hospital lacked a vital supply of blood." He paused, allowing his words to resonate. "My son is alive today, thanks to a remarkable woman who works within these walls, a woman who earns $15 an hour, a woman who cleans floors, changes linens, monitors vital signs, and tidies up after all of us. A woman who, for 2 years, anonymously donated her blood every single month, receiving no payment, no recognition, and never knowing whose life she was preserving. She acted upon the principle her mother instilled in her, that donating blood is not an act of charity, but a fundamental responsibility." He directed his gaze towards Amara, seated near the rear of the auditorium. She had been hesitant to attend, but Dr. Mbeki had persuaded her. "I passed that woman 100 times, Julian continued, his voice gaining intensity. 100 times, and I never truly saw her. And I suspect I am not alone in this. I believe this hospital, like countless others across our nation, is filled with individuals we overlook, people who sustain the entire framework, yet are compensated the least. They are the first to offer a patient comfort and the last to receive acknowledgement." He turned his attention to Marcus Webb. "Today, that changes." Marcus remained remarkably still. His expression offered no hint of his thoughts, but the tension in his crossed arms gradually subsided as they fell to his sides. Julian then formally announced the Invisible Heroes Initiative, followed by the Denise O'Shea Scholarship, and finally, the Rare Blood Registry. Upon concluding his remarks, the entire auditorium rose to its feet. Their applause was not for Julian himself, but for the profound idea that those who are least visible may hold the greatest significance. Amara remained seated in the back row, tears streaming down her face, weeping softly. It wasn't a reaction to personal honor, but to the realization that her mother's name would now grace a scholarship. It was a testament to the fact that the words she had spoken in a parking lot at 6 in the morning had manifested into tangible change. For the first time in her life, an individual in a position of power had truly listened to someone without it. 1 year later, Amara entered a lecture hall at the University of Illinois Chicago School of Medicine. She was 35 years old, carrying a backpack with a hospital identification card still clipped to the front pocket. She wore the same shoes from her last night shift, having not yet had the chance to purchase new ones. She was accompanied by two energetic 2-year-olds who had never experienced the task of mopping floors, drawing blood from their own veins, or sitting with a dying child at 3 in the morning. She found a seat in the third row, opened her notebook, and gazed at the whiteboard where the professor had inscribed the first lesson of the semester. It felt surreal, like a dream one struggles to believe even while living it. The Denise O'Shea Scholarship encompassed all her expenses, tuition, books, and a monthly stipend. Amara had applied without knowing the benefactor. The acceptance letter arrived from the hospital's education office, a formal and official document that made no mention of Julian Fairfax. She read it 3 times before the reality settled in, and there was more. Her mother was alive. Denise had undergone a kidney transplant 4 months prior. The donor remained anonymous, and the associated costs were covered by a hospital charity fund Amara had never encountered before. Dr. Becky had assisted with the administrative details, ensuring everything was handled seamlessly and officially, with no personal connections or names revealed. Amara harbored suspicions. She couldn't prove it, but she understood the nature of anonymity perhaps better than most, having spent 2 years giving anonymously herself. Now, for the first time, she was on the receiving end, accepting without knowing, feeling gratitude without a specific recipient to direct it towards. The profound symmetry of the situation was not lost on her. Seated in the lecture hall, surrounded by students young enough to be the children she had once cared for, she looked down at her hands, the same hands that had scrubbed hospital floors, that had soothed the arms of ailing children in the darkness, that had accessed veins 24 times to sustain a young boy's life with a stranger's blood. Now, those very hands held a medical textbook. The same hands, a different purpose. The same person. Her mother's voice echoed within her, a quiet and steady presence, just as it always had been when Amara needed to recall the importance of giving life itself. Amara picked up her pen and began to write. 4 years later, on a radiant Saturday morning in June, Amara O'Shea gracefully walked across the stage. She was 39 years old, clad in a black gown with a hood trimmed in green, the traditional color of the medical school. Her name was announced by the Dean of the University of Illinois Chicago College of Medicine, and as she stepped forward, the audience erupted. This was not the polite applause typically afforded to graduates, but a louder, more visceral reaction that stemmed from the heart. The people in that auditorium knew her story. While not every individual, a significant number were aware of her journey, her classmates with whom she had studied diligently, the professors who had witnessed her academic prowess, surpassing students a decade her junior, and the hospital staff who had come to celebrate one of their own transitioning from the lowest rung of the hierarchy to the highest. She approached the podium, received her diploma, a doctor of medicine specializing in pediatric hematology, the intricate study of blood disorders in children, the very field that had profoundly shaped Elijah's life, and in an unforeseen twist, her own destiny. Turning to face the audience, she scanned the rows. In the 5th row sat Elijah Fairfax, positioned between his father and Denise O'Shea. Elijah was now 11, tall for his age, and in excellent health. His autoimmune hemolytic anemia had achieved sustained remission 18 months prior, a success attributed to a combination therapy developed by Medicor AI's research division, which had been informed in part by clinical observations Amara had contributed during her residency rotations. The disease that had nearly claimed him had, in a remarkable turn of events, become the crucial link connecting his treatment to her education. Denise, now 74, sat in a wheelchair. She was frail, but her eyes sparkled with life and her posture was erect. She wore the same gold earrings she had donned on the day she first took Amara to donate blood in Accra. Julian sat with his hands clasped serenely in his lap. He hadn't yet begun to cry, but he would. Amara looked out at the vast sea of faces from the stage, her gaze searching for one in particular. Elijah held something aloft, a piece of paper, creased, its edges slightly yellowed, a corner torn from years of handling. It was the drawing of the Blood Lady, a stick figure with brown skin and large hands cradling a red heart. He had kept it. For 7 years he had preserved it, and now he held it up for all to see in a packed auditorium, beaming at the woman who had once been his nighttime storyteller and his anonymous guardian angel, and who was now officially a doctor. As Amara regarded that drawing, a torrent of emotions washed over her. Every late-night shift, every pint of blood donated, every floor she had mopped, every instance of being looked through as if she were invisible, every moment spent comforting a frightened child in the darkness, weaving tales of oceans, fishermen, and compassion. It all culminated in this single profound moment, a simple drawing in a boy's hand. She didn't need to speak. Her silence conveyed everything. She looked down at her hands, the same hands that had scrubbed floors, donated life-sustaining blood, and offered solace to a frightened young boy in the dead of night. Now those hands would expertly wield a stethoscope, yet they would never forget their humble origins. Thank you for accompanying Amara on her extraordinary odyssey from an unseen certified nursing assistant to the very doctor who played a pivotal role in saving the young boy she had implicitly been safeguarding all along. If this narrative has resonated with you, prompting a fresh perspective on the individuals you encounter daily, please consider subscribing to this channel and sharing this video with anyone who might benefit from its message. Here is a truth we must acknowledge. There are individuals in your life right now who are expending their utmost effort with no reciprocal return. They are the ones who consistently show up, perform the most demanding tests, and remain perpetually unseen. They are present in your hospitals, your schools, your workplaces, and your communities. They are the ones diligently mopping floors, navigating bus routes, stocking shelves, and providing care for your elders and your children. And the majority of us simply pass them by without notice. Amar's mother often shared a profound sentiment that I urge you to carry with you. Give life itself. Therefore, I pose 2 questions for your consideration. When was the last occasion you donated blood? And more importantly, when was the last time you truly saw someone you encounter on a regular basis? Please share your responses in the comments section. Distribute this video to individuals who consistently give without seeking recognition. Furthermore, if you or someone you know possesses a rare blood type, we implore you to consider becoming a regular donor. You might be the sole match for a child who is depending on you. Until our next encounter, may you remain kind, may you continue to give, and may you never underestimate the immense power flowing through your veins. Subscribe now and activate notifications to ensure you don't miss another inspiring story like this one.